Hi again, just thought we'd do a quick fill-in on how MOT history searches work. This is the main way we found the Peugeot Jeff, and I think it's a really useful thing to know if you are looking for a cheap second-hand car. I mean, it's good to know for any car, but people in the UK maybe aren't aware of how easy this is to use. Very simply, if you go onto the government's checkout website, all you have to do is find the registration for your car and the model of the car. You type it in and it shows you the last 10 years worth of history on there. I mean, that's good to know anyway, but it's really useful for a bit of detective work if you're buying a car. For example, if you've got several cars, several Peugeots you found, it's best to make sure you're comparing the same model of car, and you can see, if 10 of them have all got the same issues on and on again, you can get the idea that these are just standard things that that age of car has. And suddenly you find one that's got all these extra bits that might seem normal, like 10 of them have, say, worn CV boots or something, and then suddenly one of them's got worn suspension parts as well, and none of them have really shown up the sort of bits. It would suggest it's maybe just been driven that bit harder, and it just gives you an idea that there's other parts that might be failing because of the way the car's been driven as well. There's one Peugeot we're looking at that had a lot of issues that had appeared on one MOT failure, and then about a month later it all disappeared off the MOT. Sent a couple of emails through to the guy selling it asking about this, and he basically said when he got it, it just went through the MOT, he didn't have to do any work on it. And then looking through, I think that was on eBay, so I went through looking at other cars, and I think on Gumtree I spotted an old advert from about 2 months earlier with the same car being sold, I think without the MOT. Sometime, if this guy had it quickly and he'd had it to buy as a cheap car to replace another one and move it on, he then, somehow either someone had bought it before him, done the work or not, you just don't know, and it gets a bit vague when we can't find anyone who's actually done the work, or if the MOT garage has just been a bit, sloppy on some of it, we don't know. You can also look at things like even mileage on there to see how many miles it's been doing every year. And we talk about, people always say, don't go too high. I mean, some cars, like the Volvo I had, absolutely fine at 170,000 miles. The Peugeots, I wouldn't necessarily go that high with, a fairly cheap basic engine. But at the same time, for someone with 20,000 miles, I'd be pretty sure as soon as I start using it regularly, every seal in the engine is going to go because it's not being lubricated properly for a very long time. So you can kind of get an idea of how the car's being used. If it's been stored for like 5 years and the owner hasn't mentioned that, then you've got that information there when you look at the mileage figures as well. When you haven't got paperwork for these cars, as often older cars haven't, you might have a couple of years really early on, a couple of dealer stamps and then nothing. But at least this way you can sort of see how jobs have been done over the time. I mean, you don't know if they've been done properly, but if you've got several MOTs, if it kind of goes away for a year and then comes back for a year then goes away, maybe the MOT place they're using is kind of being a bit vague on it. But if you can see some things that are appearing and then disappearing and that's it, then you get the idea that these things are being fixed and sorted. And again, if they're just regular basic jobs that are coming through that any car of that age would have, the car's being looked after properly, it's not being thrashed or anything. So as far as it goes, a really easy way of looking through your car's history. It's also worth looking on the internet generally to see what can generally go wrong with these cars. You can compare that to the MOT history. I mean, this is standard advice for buying a car, to look through. You can look at, videos, you can look at Parker's guides and see what sort of things can fail and look for those when you physically look at the car. But like us having to go quite a distance to find one we thought was good enough, it's worth having that kind of listing first rather than just having to look at a few pictures and go with what the owner says. It's great to think you found a genuine owner, but it's hard to tell when you're buying these things. So it's just a bit of extra peace of mind, really. This wasn't really intended as a full how to buy a second-hand car. I mean, this is something I could probably talk about, having bought a lot of them. But everyone has their own techniques. I'm sure people would tell me that they would disagree with what we look for. I mean, for example, Number of previous owners is something a lot of people hang to. I think that's a really hard way of judging. Obviously, if it's a newer car and it's had 10 owners in 2 years, you could be fairly wary about it. But if it's an older car and people have just bought it for a month because their last car broke and they just needed something to run them around, that wouldn't necessarily make me suspicious, and there'd be other things I'd look for first. But hopefully, this is some help. It's something that people don't look for when they're looking for car history and things. It's a really simple and free service out there. So it's definitely worth thinking about the next time you're looking for any second-hand car, really.